Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. So one of the most powerful and potent medicines psychedelics can offer each of us within our lives is the ability to gain awareness around the things holding us back. However, being able to then integrate those awarenesses into our daily waking state of reality is, in many cases, much easier said than done. For this reason, among many others, it is so important to have guides and coaches that can allow you to make sense of your experience and move into the latter stages that come after awareness, which are acceptance and finally surrender. It is within that surrender that we can allow the flow of energy and information that make up our lives to take hold and bring us into the highest representation of who we are as God in the physical form as human beings. Today's guest on the show is a master coach who works directly with people dealing with challenges surrounding addiction, emotional distress, overwhelm, anxiety, and lack of fulfillment, to name but a few. His experience going through these exact challenges has allowed him to know firsthand exactly what his clients are moving through and how to relate and create the most effective and fun-centered services to supercharge his clients' lives and move them from merely surviving to thriving. In addition, he is also the host of the Omar Pinto coaching podcast and has also experienced firsthand the healing powers of psychedelic medicines when connected with intentionally and responsibly. Within this episode, we will be diving into the aspects of these experiences, how they shifted his state of being, what he has been able to create in his beautiful expression of life from those experiences, and much, much more. So please strap yourself in for an incredibly powerful episode and give me a hand in welcoming the one, the only Omar Pinto to the show. Omar, pleasure to have you here, man.
Ryan, that was probably the best intro I've had to date. So thank you, brother.
Of course, man.
10, baby.
Man, you know, I like to start these episodes on a bang, right? And we were connecting before I hit record. And there's like, the second I connect with someone, I can tell right off the bat, like how amazing of a flow we're going to have. And I am so excited for this because I can tell right off the bat, we're both operating on vacation vibration right here. And I'm just so excited to get into all of this with you and really share your journey and your experiences and your takeaways and all of that with the listeners and myself as well, right? Because, you know, we learn from one another. We're all walking each other home, right? And so anything that you relate to me, I might be able to make more sense or better sense of my experience of life, right? In my, times with psychedelic medicines. And so I am so excited to get into it, brother. And it's a pleasure to have you here.
Let's do it. I'm excited to be here.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So dude, I want to start off by, obviously in the intro, I went over some of the challenges you've gone through, right? And specifically addiction, right? Because this is something that, I know within the 12-step program that you've been a part of, psychedelics are looked at as kind of just that, right? Drugs. And they can be that, right? They can definitely have those same addictive patterns. I've seen many people fall into it, specifically with medicines such as cannabis, where if it were alcohol, it would be a very destructive thing. And the only reason it's not is because something like cannabis, you can't overdose on it. You can't necessarily, go home and, beat your family on it or whatever. But at the same token, you can still do a lot of damage to your psyche. You can still do a lot of trauma to yourself and have a lot of traumatizing, patterns come forth. And so I'm curious, as someone who's gone through addiction and seen that firsthand and gone through the 12-step program, how did you come to be open to the idea of psychedelics?
Well, first, just based on what you just said there, anything done in excess becomes a poison. So when we look at just our food consumption, right, and the rate of obesity, around the world, right? So there is, the food out there is poisoned, okay, with all these pesticides and preservatives and chemicals and sugar, right? And in excess, it becomes a poison. And so psychedelics are the same way, especially in your early 20s. When I first started experimenting with psychedelics, it was very, very short-lived. It was in my late 20s, early 30s. I'd done mushrooms and had a horrible trip, okay, because set and setting were not appropriate. wasn't even discussed. It was a bunch of buddies and like, dude, I've got a bunch of shrooms. Like, yeah, man, let's do this, right? And so I had done some shrooms the first night with my buddies and had like an amazing time, just laughing all night. It was so much fun. It was just incredible, right? And then I guess either a week later or a few days later, whatever the case may be, it's like, hey, man, let's do it again. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it again. And I thought, just like everything else, well, if I did this much and it was great, then doing double the amount is going to be like much more amazing. And I mean, I could not get off that ride. I could not get off that ride. And I said, psychedelics is not for me. And I had done the same thing with ecstasy before it was called Molly or an MDMA. It was just X.
Yeah.
And this is back in, 1999, 2000. So many moons ago.
The triple stack days.
So, right. And I had no idea, right? So I had a couple of pills. I took one, right? Started having like a great experience. Had no idea of how it works. There's an uphill climb, there's a peak, then there's a drop, then there's another uphill climb, there's a peak, right? So on the downward cycle, I go, oh, it must be over with. So I took another one. And any of you who know this, that's called candy flipping, and you not want to be doing that. And all of a sudden I am just like stuck in this unbelievably uncomfortable state. And there was yet another drug or psychedelic or however you want to classify. I'm not even sure how do you classify ecstasy? Is that a psychedelic?
Yeah, it would be a psychedelic because it's technically like a psychoactive, intoxicating medicine that opens your heart. So yeah, I'd call it a psychedelic.
Okay. All right.
Go with it. Sounds legit.
I was done with that. So it was like mushrooms, and I'd never done LSD. And I was like, forget this stuff, man. This is too unpredictable. I'm going to stick to what I know, cocaine.
Yeah.
Right? So that was... I can control that. Famous last words.
Yes.
Right? So for me, it was the holy trinity of alcohol, cocaine, and marijuana. Okay. And it was the chemist trying to figure out the right mixture. And for a while, I'm able to do that. But eventually, as we all know, it becomes impossible to control. It takes over, right? And it's just, you just become this consumption machine that ultimately leads to a dramatic rock bottom.
Yeah.
So I lost my business. I lost my marriage, and as soon as my daughter was born, like my wife left me right before my daughter was born. And when she was born, that was the catalyst. That was for me where I was like, wow, I'm either going to die, right, and leave a legacy of absolute just sadness and grief for my little daughter, or maybe I could just get my shit together.
Yeah.
So I opted for the latter.
Yeah.
And so that's when I got involved into 12 steps. Now, 12 steps, much like religion, I had left already a dogmatic culture. My mother's a Jehovah's Witness, still a Jehovah's Witness. I was born into it. So I was already born into a dogmatic environment, programming, belief systems, just control, right? The meek will inherit the earth, that whole thing. And so when I was 18 years old, I'm like, I'm out. Okay. I belong to no one. I belong to me, and I'm going to do things on my terms. So from 18, I walked away from God. I walked away from spirituality. I walked away from religion. I walked away from all that. Went right into this very hedonistic sort of lifestyle, which lasted, a good, 15 years. Okay. So that was a good 15-year run that ended epically, disastrously, like I just said. And then started my 12-step journey again. Because I was in such a state of desperation, the solution was very simple, okay? And the camaraderie helps tremendously. So here's this group of people have gone through the same thing. They're sharing their stories, their experience, strength, and hope. I'm relating to them. These are my people. And I dove right in. So I spent a good solid 10 years in 12-step recovery. I mean, I worked the steps, militantly. It took me 4 years to finish all 12 steps. A lot of people, it takes a lot less time, but I picked a sponsor that was militant, We would go back. I would answer questions, right? It was, if there was wrong, I would go back. We met once a week, right? I really wanted to integrate, which is a very important word. When we're talking about plant medicine, integration is so important. It's probably the most important aspect of the journey, is the integration after, right? And actually even preparation before. But what I didn't realize what was happening is I was integrating. I was like really on a cellular level, really getting into the whole 12-step model and the 12-step philosophy. And it worked for me, right? It really, really worked for me. And because of the way that I embraced it and because of how thorough I worked it, then I had guys that were following me, right? That was like, hey, can you sponsor me? Hey, can you sponsor me? Hey, can you sponsor me? Right. And before I knew it, I would be sponsoring like 5-6 guys a week. And my whole life kind of became very, very small. It was like work and then 12 steps and then sponsorship. And I've also got a daughter and I'm trying to have a social life, right? And it became very, very challenging because it was kind of like all consuming. And I realized that for me, I'm kind of an all or nothing kind of guy, right? So there's these extremes, right? So I was either all in or I was all out. I didn't know how to create a balance, how to set boundaries, right? That was none of that. Still wasn't discussed. Boundaries and coping mechanisms, right? And self-care, right? It's always about doing the next right thing, right? And being of service and, being there for the newcomer and all that rah-rah stuff, which is great, right? And it did keep me on the straight and narrow. But probably around 11 years in, it's a long time to be doing the same thing. And there's this, the little voice in my head was like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Is there something more out there? Right. And so at the time I'd gotten remarried. My wife, full blown personal development. Like she's studying everything. Like she's a yoga practitioner, yoga teacher. She's studied Reiki, acupuncture, certified as a wellness coach, it's just kind of, and when I met her, she was in one workshop after the next, right? And I was stuck in this one place, right? Afraid to step out because it's kind of frowned upon, right? So similarly to religion, where if I was like, yeah, I'm a Jehovah's Witness, but I really like to check out that Catholic church. Oh,
how dare you?
Right? If you step in there, you're literally going to burst into flames, right?
Yeah.
And you start mentioning personal development in 12-step room, and it's the same thing. Oh, wow, no, this is it. This is all there is. This is the only way. And so it started to I started to question everything. And so my wife kind of started opening the gates. And, at some point I had launched a podcast called the Share Podcast, which was purely a recovery-based podcast where I would interview people that had recovered from drugs and alcohol, primarily people that were in 12 steps. So I still stayed within the fold. Even though I branched out a little bit with the podcast, right? It was still recovery focused. So that was the conversation. And eventually I started getting guests that were not in 12 steps. And there was this introduction to personal development, to coaching, right? And to masterminds and to entrepreneurship. And there was these things that started all of this feels like I like this, And so as I start kind of listening to more the rhetoric and the language around personal development, my wife told me that she was going to go to an NLP workshop. And I was like, NLP, I just interviewed 2 people that were talking. They were NLP practitioners. Oh my God, right? I want to go, right? And that was my first big step.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
Out of the fold and into personal development. And that's the beauty of those extremes, because for some, it's very dangerous, those extremes, and it's good to find that middle ground between anything. But the beautiful thing is that because when I'm connected to something, I just go. As soon as I'm called,
yes,
okay, I go, right? So I was called to go to an NLP workshop. I spent 2 days in an intensive workshop, and I said, "Oh my God, this is it. This is so much more. This is much more expansive. It's so much. It's got so much more resources and tools. I can help so many more people as an NLP practitioner, right?" And so I dove head in. I hired the guy to coach me one-on-one, the guy that was doing the workshop. My wife and I signed up to go to the workshop, or to actually the training for becoming an NLP practitioner. I was all in. Like I was all into this, like I was all into the 12 steps. And I found myself kind of like sliding out of 12 steps, moving more into personal development. And every time I talked about personal development to the people in my group, they'd be like,
"What are you doing?"
Either they'd have a bewildered look in their face. It's like, oh, that, careful with all that stuff. You know what I mean?
Don't you want to stay in this box forever?
Right, exactly. Start feeling that. Thank God. There's a part of me that immediately is like a saber-toothed tiger. Very defensive, very protective. When it starts to feel like someone's caging me, it gets nasty, right? So I kind of just ignored, kept moving forward, dove in. Before I knew it, I had launched my own coaching platform. I was coaching people with a 12-step program. Were frowning on me as a coach. Oh, you're charging to sponsor people? I'm like, I'm a coach.
It's
okay,
different.
right. So there's all this judgment and shit, and I'm like, this is the good news. The good news is that things just kept pulling me out. And then eventually my wife had this friend who had done ayahuasca. And she was raving about it. So she was a heroin addict. She was either a heroin addict, an alcoholic, or both. Okay. And it changed her life. Like from that single experience, it completely moved the needle. It pulled her out of that space where that whatever it was, whether it was alcohol or whether it was, I'm pretty sure it was heroin. She was done with it, like done. And I was like, that's incredible, right? What is this ayahuasca stuff? Never heard of it. The minute you hear the word ayahuasca, you can't unhear it.
Yes.
Okay. Once you hear ayahuasca and somebody says, "Oh, what's ayahuasca? I've never heard of it." Eventually they're going to hear it again. Okay. Because that's how it works. It's this mystical word that as soon as it lands, right, the seed gets planted. So I went and talked to my sponsor about it, and he's like, "Dude, no way. That's a drug. Okay. That's, you're going to relapse. You know what I mean? It's your sobriety, blah, blah, blah." And I'm still like, at the time I was 15 years, clean and sober. When I mean clean and sober, it's like alcohol, drugs, weed. I mean, like nothing. Okay. I was cautious about taking cold medicine. Okay. There certainly wasn't any Valium or Vicodins and nothing, zero. No SSRIs, no narcotics, nothing. Like 15 solid years. Right. And my life was amazing. I had a great relationship with my daughter. I'd become the father that I'd always wanted to be, someone that she could look up to, someone that she could respect, someone that was a leader in the community, someone that was helping other people. And then I had the podcast. So there was a lot on the line. Right. So I was like, "Honey, I can't do this." Anyway, what happens is ayahuasca, I'm coaching people and I'm getting better at it and I'm getting more clients. And eventually I have clients start talking about plant medicine, right? I'm like, and and finally I had this client that we couldn't get a breakthrough, right? We couldn't pull him out of his depression. So he's like, "Dude, I'm going to Costa Rica and I'm doing ayahuasca." And I was like, oh, there it is again. There's again. I go, "Okay, well, as soon as you get back, tell me all about it."
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I wanted to stop by while I had your ear and share a very special announcement with you. You may have heard people say that we are facing an epidemic of loneliness in the world right now. We believe that this is only half of the story, and that the real epidemic and the root of feeling loneliness is a lack of connection. Do you want to connect to more purpose and passion with the important work you are doing? Do you wish you had closer friendships with people who understand you, listen to you, and are truly present with you? Are you wishing you and your partner could move deeper into love together? The connection in all of these areas comes down to the one most important element of connection, the ability to connect with yourself. If you are ready to see change in your life, if you are ready to feel differently when you wake up in the morning, if you are ready to step into the life you envision for yourself, the first and only route to making these changes is settling in, quieting down, and being able to connect to yourself. Now, this can be a major challenge in today's world with media, culture, and other energies that pull us out of our ability to connect. When you've tried fitness, meditation, and other self-development practices and still find yourself feeling alone and lacking connection, you may be feeling out of options and wondering if you'll ever be able to tap into your full potential that you know deep down is possible in your life. What we have found in working with our clients is that plant medicines, and cannabis in particular, can guide us in having the experience of what true connection looks and feels like. In this way, cannabis can act as a rite of passage for connection and a gateway toward the spouse, tribe, mission, and life you know you are ready for. Now, the pitfall here is that many people become codependent on the medicines, such as cannabis, and expect the medicine to do the work for them. If this continues, what will happen is the user will find themselves reaching for more and more cannabis to feel connection, without taking ownership of their role in the outcome of their experience, and thus they will fall into repeating the same painful patterns. As Zen Buddhism teaches, how you do anything is how you do everything. Therefore, if this painful pattern is showing up in your relationship with cannabis, it is likely a reflection of the same patterns you're experiencing in your friendships, romantic relationships, business, and your relationship with yourself. Learning to work with cannabis effectively will supercharge your experience and will help you get the result you are actually seeking, which is connection. We created a program to support seekers and high achievers like you in doing exactly this. To learn how to work with the healing power of cannabis to connect you back to yourself so you can unlock purpose, passion, and creativity in all areas of your life. What this program will give you is the long-lost user manual for cannabis. This user manual will teach you how to connect with cannabis correctly so that the plant can act as your spiritual aid and ally in life, just as our ancestors understood and practiced. If you're ready to unlock the full power of cannabis, meet like-minded people on the same path as you, build more purpose into your life, and have the most fun doing homework you've ever had, this message is for you. To learn more and qualify for your spot in the program, hop over to our Instagram profile at highly.optimized and book a discovery call. The conscious cannabis revolution is here. Will you be joining us? Sending all of you love. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Well, he comes back and it's a different human being. Okay. Like that's the thing. When you work with someone, I'd worked with this guy for months. And all of a sudden, from the last conversation to the conversation after ayahuasca, it's two different men. He was emoting. He was emotional. He was crying. He was joyful, right? He was excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is undeniable proof of a before and after. And the only thing that's changed is ayahuasca. So I get off the call with the guy and I was like, honey, whatever I said before, just forget it. Before I change my mind, Costa Rica and San Ramon, which has like a 3 to 4 month wait. Okay. Go in there, right? They're not, the price is fair, right? It's fair, but you're there for 5 days. They feed you for 5 days. They give you yoga. You have to do ceremony. You do 2 ceremonies. You do combo, and it was the best experience of my life to this date. Okay, like my very first experience, and so what I realized on my very first ceremony was I got a unique experience. Not everyone gets a unique experience, but for me, it was like I'm 50 years old. I was 49, so this was We're talking a year and a half ago, almost 2 years. It was January 2020 for our 49th birthday. Okay. And actually, I'm about to turn 51. So we're talking about just under 2 years. And all of a sudden, everything that I had been doing, the drug addiction, the 12 steps, the coaching, the personal development, me wearing glasses, my inability to sit and study, and perceived ADD, right? All of it was like this. I got this montage of my whole life, and I was like, oh my God, like I picked this. Like this was my journey.
Yeah.
I signed up for this. I was the fucking architect.
Yes.
Oh my God. Like I'm getting teary right now. Just getting teary because I'm right there. And I remember I was on this mat, and the ceremony's going on. I'm fucking weeping, because I'm like, oh my God, all the answers I've been seeking, all the answers, all this work, it's paying off. I can't believe it's taken me, then it's like, I can't believe it's taken me this long to do this. Fuck. Like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, yeah, like, and it was like this sense of absolute knowing and clarity, right? And just calm that just kind of came over me. And it's like, there's no mistakes. Oh, there's no mistakes, and there's no failures. This is your journey. This is your hero's journey. And you could not be the man that you are today if you had not chosen that path. You chose to struggle. You chose to endure. You chose to suffer. This is how you chose to learn. And it was just from that moment on, like I came out of that experience a different human being, with a different appreciation for Mother Nature, for Mama Ayahuasca, for Mother Earth. As humans, we're fucking rapists, like, no regard, for the earth or for the inhabitants, right? Like that's just the 99% is so expansive because it goes into so many different realms. But there's very few people that know that what we're doing here, we have complete control over. Okay, it is an experience that we signed up for, and we have an opportunity to either get on board with the mayhem or speak up, right? Speak up and speak out about a different way, about an awakening that is true, that letting go, that surrender to being human and what it means to be human, and knowing that. For me, you've done this before and you'll do it again. So fucking enjoy the ride, man.
Dude,
okay,
yes.
So I'm going to stop right there because that was a lot.
Dude, what an incredible gift to be able to be brought along in your journey. And, to hear all of that, because, it brings up so many similarities between our journeys. And, it brings up this theory I have that I actually got downloaded during an LSD ceremony that I was on, where I accidentally puddled myself with, let's just say, a ridiculous amount of acid one time. And, these things happen, right? We were talking before the show, and you could look at it as a mistake, or we could look at it as that's what I signed up for, right?
Yep.
And so through this experience, it was the experience that taught me the power of surrender, right? Because I knew as I was coming up, I'm like, something is different than I expected. And I have two choices right now. I can either try to fight it, which like every fiber of my being was like, don't do that, right? Or I could just surrender and know I'm safe. I'm in a safe environment. I'm with the one person that I would like. The person I did it with was the one person who, if something like that happened, I wished to be with. So I was like, this is perfect, right? So through that experience, I melted into the universe, became one with the stars, became one with the earth. I mean, I was infinite spirit soaring among the cosmos. And during that, I got downloaded this whole idea of being an ethereal extreme sporter. And what I really tout that as is, let's say, for instance, you're a new soul, right? And you're infinite spirit, right? You're the cosmic intelligence, right? You've yet to embody. And you're hearing all of these talks up in the astral realm about and beyond about these, physical incarnations, right? And this experience, right? And, for a while, you're just saying no, right? You're like, no, I don't want to do that, right? And then eventually you keep hearing about it and you're like, all right, I'm going to try this out. but I don't know how much I'm going to like it, right? I want to essentially do a microdose. And so I'm going to go down as a fly, and I'm going to get a good look around for 7 days. And then I'm going to be back, right? And so you go down, you have this experience, you come back, you're like, whoa, that was wild. I felt like I had this sensation thing, and I had ups and downs, and I could fly. And now I want to go again, but I want to go a little bit deeper, right? So now you decide to go down as a bird. You get a really expansive look around, and you're down for a little bit longer, and then you're back again. And you're like, so what do I come down as this time, right? And so now you decide to come down as a turtle, for instance, right? Like a tortoise that lives 100 years. And so you get a really expansive look around. And during this time, you start realizing like, okay, there's something to this. Certain species of turtles live 100 years, right? So you get a really long time to kind of just be in observation mode, right? And so you continue going through these iterations, right? Of I want to try a little bit more. Now I'll be a tiger, right? Now I'll be a lion. Now I'll be this. Now I'll be that. And eventually you get to the level where if you're playing a video game, it's just not fun unless you play expert, right? And so you decide, I want to do the absolute craziest thing I possibly can. I want to become a human. I want to be, I want to be alive. I want to be aware that I'm alive. I want to be aware that there's things I'll never know. I want all of it, right? I want to have relationships. I want to have a business and all of these things, right? And so at that level, you have now graduated to the level of ethereal extreme sporter. And so what you were talking about in your ayahuasca journey is exactly what I've realized many times too, which is like, dude, you're a unit. You signed up for this, right? You signed up for this wild ride of being a human being, which is, one of the most advanced life forms in the universe. I mean, there's many out there, but that's what I choose to believe anyway. But, really like these experiences, they can teach you so much. And, you talked about so many beautiful things, and I wrote some notes, and that famous, more equals better type thing, right? Which can get us into so much trouble, especially when we're messing with consciousness altering substances, right? They can definitely get us into trouble with things like alcohol and cocaine and things like that. But generally with those things, to a certain level, you do feel a little bit better when you have more, right? Because a lot of times you're interacting with those, particular substances because you're running away from things like pain and things like trauma and things like that. So they can actually help you feel better. But the thing with psychedelics is their job is to bring that to the forefront, right? Their job is to bring your trauma out, right? So you can deal with it, you can view it, you can become aware of it. And so it's a really slippery slope. And this is one of the challenges I find a lot of people get into is, they maybe not were a full-blown addict, maybe they were, but they kind of have this more equals better type thing, right? I mean, let's look at our society, right? Obesity, all these things, right? So, there's this whole entire program that a lot of us are indoctrinated with through the Western society specifically where, more equals better. So if I can have this much food, well, this much food is better. If I can have this much alcohol, this much must be better, right? And they apply that because how you do anything is how you do everything to psychedelics.
Yep.
And it gets them in some challenges. And, then you moved on to essentially creating sovereignty, right? Being like, I don't necessarily want to be, confined and compartmentalized to one particular avenue of, health, right? Like the 12 steps, right? Like just self-development, like just plant medicines, right? I want to be a full spectrum person here, right? I want to be able to use the canvas that is my life to be able to take the paintbrush that is me in my life and be able to draw different colors. And I don't want to just stick to blues, and I don't want to just have reds. I want to have every color of the rainbow in there. And, really like, we hear that, you were talking about boundaries, and, I say a lot that your yes has no power until you learn to say no, right? Which is something that a lot of people understand. But how I like to translate that for something like people like you and I, right? And I imagine a lot of people listening is your on has no power until you learn to turn off, right? And this is one of the things, right? Where, if our day is, perfect, we have this charging section in the morning, right? Where we're doing our rituals and our practices. Then we have our discharge, right? Going out, doing our stuff, coaching, recording podcasts, talking to people, doing all this networking, right? And then we must have relax mode, right? And it's the times in between those, right? That I think a lot of people start having challenges with, like, how do I move from my charge into my discharge? How do I know when I'm done discharging and I'm ready to start relaxing? And that's where like these recognition rituals can come in handy. That's one of the main things that I've interacted with cannabis with in the past until I learned to get that message on my own and be able to invoke that state within me. And it's one of the things I coach people with cannabis, especially men, right? Like we have this challenge. I'm the exact same way as you, Omar. Like I am all gas, no brakes into things. As an example, about a month and a half ago, I started watching Gaia. I started really becoming aware of, like, Rachel and I, my partner, we would we would watch entertainment on the weekends. We knew we needed to relax because both of us run our own businesses and we're very like go, go, go. And so we would watch, the best things we could find on like Netflix and things like this, but it just wasn't fulfilling us whatsoever. And also a lot of times we were finding ourselves drawn to things that were violent in nature, right? Because we've been taught through society that, adrenaline and this norepinephrine feeling and all of these cortisol feelings are kind of like how we get entertained, right? And so I made a conscious choice to start only interacting with things that were positive in nature, right? If you can see my Post-it notes in the background, like everything in my environment is tailored towards positive reaffirmation. And so I started watching Gaia, and which is a beautiful network. If you haven't watched it, I highly recommend it.
It's spent a lot of hours watching Gaia, especially when it was about the psychedelics. I spent a lot of time absorbing that information. It's a wonderful channel.
Yeah. And I don't know if you're familiar with the show Mystery Teachings, but that show is incredible. And so I got drawn to it right off the bat. That show and Initiation as well, which is all about Atlantis. And I've always been called into plant medicine integration work. And, I've often thought like, I think it's been many lifetimes before where I've done shamanic work and things like this, just in the way that I've fallen into that role within medicine ceremonies, right? Like I've always been the one that even when I puddle myself with a ridiculous amount of acid, like I still have my wits with me, right? I know right away, like, okay, shut off, surrender. And that's interesting because typically in my life, like I'm a very go, go, go person. So I started bringing these things together. And anyway, I started watching the show Mystery Teachings. And like the whole show is kind of a mystery, right? You don't really know what they're talking about right off the bat. They're talking about, DNA activations in the quantum realm and, immortality. And then you start kind of catching the thread that, hey, this is a lineage, right? And there's a system here. And anyone can join this system now that the modern mystery school, aka the North America chapter, has begun. Before this, these lineages were kept to initiates only. I mean, people that were invited in. And so I felt the call. I was laying in bed on zero gravity, right? I love that on my bed, sitting there, zero gravity, watching the TV. And I felt the call. And just as you said, I felt that call. I looked up practitioners in my area that night, sent out 8 emails to different practitioners. One responded the next day. And 3 days later, I was getting my first DNA activation. 3 weeks later, I got initiated into what they call the Brotherhood and Sisterhood of Light. Yesterday, I went and got my second activate. I mean, I'm all in, right? Even the instructor that I'm going with, she's like, "You're really committed, huh?" And I'm like, "Listen, when I find something, I like to go all in on it. Like it's just how I operate, right?" And so I totally feel you, man. We're the exact same way in that. Really, like, what I heard so beautifully and what you said was that, it was really the healing power of the feminine that allowed you to fully turn on and become balanced, right? First with your wife, opening you up to these new things and you getting curious about it and her being your permission slip, right? Of like, hey, like I'm a normal functioning human and I include all of these things in my life, right? And then obviously sitting with Mama Ayahuasca, right? And being able to feel that feminine energy, just love you unconditionally, right? And be okay with however you are, right? And this is something that, mushrooms have done beautiful wonders for me. I mean, after my father passed, I had a lot of trauma and I stored it all in and I knew it too. Like I knew I'm like, oh, I'm storing this, right? But I didn't know how to get it out. And then eventually I forgot how to cry, like all these things, right? And I remember this moment when this was only in the last year when I had gone through a shit ton of self-development work. I had been on 26 adventures in the last year and a half, going out, meeting new people, going to Mexico, sitting with peyote. I mean, all these beautiful experiences. And I was in my bed and it was Valentine's Day. And Rachel and I decided to interact with a heroic dose of mushrooms, which I had done plenty of times before and had some very interesting experiences. But never.
Now, hold on real quick.
Yeah.
When you say heroic dose, how many grams?
5 grams. Yeah. It's not my vocabulary.
Right off the go.
Yeah. I mean, I had done plenty of like doses of mushrooms before, but this was like 5 grams at once. And we always make it into a tea because it's with lemon tech. And that's like, basically a lot of the components in the lemon help supercharge
I use orange juice. Yeah.
Yeah. It helps convert. That's the word I'm looking for.
It's a delivery system. It's a great delivery system.
It is. And it helps convert the psilocybin and the psilocin before it actually goes through your body. So it hits you quicker. It's a much smoother ride and it shoots you directly up into really down into Mother Earth, right? Because mushrooms are a very inward journey for me. And so
very grounding.
Yeah. And so what I realized in that experience was that, mushrooms were actually being very kind to me. And I had had many experiences before where I had thought that they were being challenging to me, right? And I was fine with that. Like I understood that much, but I realized in that experience, because that experience, I remember I was having this beautiful ride. I was dancing with the cosmos. I was, having all these intuitive downloads. And then I had this download that went like this. Rachel was in her own world. And I just go, laughter is a lot like crying. And in that moment, like, I don't know what happened. It cracked and I sobbed for like the next hour and a half straight. I mean, everything came out. Like, I'm talking like, I don't remember the last time I ever cried like this. Probably when I was like 7 years old, like that long ago. And it was cleansing. And I realized in that moment that like the reason they had never brought that out of me is because I didn't have the capacity to be able to feel safe in that environment, right? I didn't know that by breaking down, that's where breakthroughs happen, right? Again, this language that we use that constructs reality. And so like, you know, really like what this journey, it sounds like for you and for me has been, is a journey of surrendering and being able to go from the 3D reality of the mind to the 4D reality of the heart and allow us to follow our hearts. And when you follow your heart, a million unseen hands will come out to help you and life will just fall into place, right? It does take a certain amount of effort of you like going all in, but in that respect, I mean, you can surrender a lot to life and have things just open up to you in ways you never imagined.
Oh, absolutely. What a beautiful narration. Okay. you know, and that real end culmination of what is, right? And there's this ability to emote, to express emotions. One of the downloads that I got recently in my own plant medicine journey, especially now that I'm working with psilocybin. And recently I had an experience where I was, facilitating for one of my dear friends, right? And just did not know how to express emotions, right? It just like what you described. And then we just got to this place where he was talking about his kids and he just started sobbing. And it was so beautiful, right? And life changing, life altering, and instantaneous. It allowed that body to feel the body, this vessel to feel safe once again, to shed tears, to express emotions, to be vulnerable, to be at a loss for words. Because that's another thing too. We hate being at a loss for words. We hate being surprised. We hate not knowing things. It's that sense of vulnerability that we have not learned to navigate through, that was not taught to us as men. It was like, man up, be strong, don't show your emotions, don't show weakness, and before you know it, you're just so wound up. It's impossible for anyone to get through, even the people that you want to get through. There's no way, because you haven't been taught, right? And the medicine just has such a beautiful way of teaching you how to be emotional, how to share and express emotions. And right there, I got this kind of download where it was like, because I work with men and women, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting, depending on where I'm at, I'll get more male clients that come in, or I'll get more female clients that come in. It's an interesting way the universe works that way for me. Yeah. Right. But I recognize too that, part of my journey, or part of what I'm supposed to be doing, is teaching men how to feel. When I talk about my daughter, or even when I'm on this podcast, I'll be brought to a moment that was so profound, so healing, that but the tears just come up, right? It's just that honor and that reverence for change, for the medicine, for mama. I've such a I don't even pray to God anymore. Like I do, but for the most part, whenever it's interesting, whenever I'm in a quandary, or whenever I'm meditating, or whenever I have a question, I'm like, Mama, help me. Mama, guide me. Right. I've always had strong women around me. Right. So it's not a surprise that I found my way to Mama Ayahuasca. Right. And it's not a surprise that I lean on her before I think about the male aspect. I always go towards the feminine. It's softer, it's more nurturing. She's still stern. She is stern, and she delivers the message hard, okay, when it needs to be. I have certainly, on my second ceremony, it was the same trip, right? I only took I took a half a cup. I think that's it. I did a half a cup, and I think I did a quarter cup, right? So I didn't get a full cup, right? And a magical experience. So again, I'm thinking, for the second one, maybe I do a little bit more. Maybe I'll do a full cup. You know what I mean? I toyed back and forth between how much. So then I finally decided, no, I'm going to do a full cup, man, because, I want to go all in, right? And as soon as I took that first cup, I sat down on my mat, and the voice was instantaneous. I sat down on my mat, and Mama said, more is better. More is better, isn't it? Always with you, Omar. More is better. I mean, it was so intense. It was so powerful. it just cracked me open. It felt like I had bracelets that just went right, and it says prepare to launch because here we go, right?
Yes.
And it was just this like, more is not better. You don't need more. Respect the medicine and respect yourself. Okay, more is not better. Take what you need.
Yes.
Right. And then from then on, I'm like, half a cup, right? I've done 16 ceremonies. I've done 16 ayahuasca ceremonies. And in total, it hasn't been a total of 16 cups.
Yeah.
Okay. I would say probably somewhere in the neighborhood of, if I do the numbers, if I were to guess, it's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 12. Mm-hmm. And it's only because in the last, I just came back from ceremony, last weekend. Okay. I was in a 3-day retreat. So it's not ironic that I'm on this call.
Of course, like attracts like.
and I'm like, okay, so do you work with half a cup or 3/4? No, I work with, you sit down, I give you your cup.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, hey, he goes, you have sovereignty. If you want to do a half. And I was like, oh. I go, okay, well, and then it's like, okay, wait a minute. I'm here. Right. And this is how he likes to work. So I'm just going to follow. As a matter of fact, I'll mention him because most shamans do not like to be mentioned by name, but he's out there. His name is Shaman Omar. Go figure.
That's right? A sign.
So, and he travels all over the world. Right. And he is, branded as Shaman Omar. He's very outspoken about doing ayahuasca. Right. So, I mean, if you were to Google Shaman Omar, you'd see exactly where his next retreat was and if you could join and that kind of a thing. So I really, and for him, he was like, Omar, everyone needs to know about ayahuasca. The minute they hear the word ayahuasca, as soon as they hear ayahuasca, it can't be unheard. It plants the seed and eventually they will find their way to it.
Yes.
Okay? And this is what this world needs.
Yes.
Okay? And I was like, brother, I am all in. I am with you. Right.
Speaking your language.
Right. And so ultimately we did 2 ceremonies in the evening and I did a cup on each. That's it. Mm-hmm. Right? Other guys went up and did more and who wants more? And I am always like, I'm good. Yeah. It doesn't really matter how it hits me. Right. I like to respect the medicine in that aspect. And I think I've only gone up to get more. I mean, I would say maybe 3 times. Right. But ultimately on the third one was during the day in a stream next to a waterfall.
Wow.
In nature. So what you were describing about being one, buddy, when you do ayahuasca, I've never done ayahuasca during the day. When you do ayahuasca during the day and you're sitting in a stream, you literally disappear.
Wow.
You are one with everything and everything is one with you. It was just this incredible awareness and knowing of what is and what is the truth. I am that I am, yes. And it was like this powerful message, right? It was deeper than the first 2 nights, right? And I'd only done that. And he was like, okay, for this one, I suggest strongly only half a cup, right? Because this is a whole different experience, right? And it was so profound and so deep, but at the same time, it was this Mother Nature going, Omar, remember that in your work, you will be consumed. You consume people's energy. You consume people's trauma. You consume people's, you take in their energy, right? Yeah. So you must cleanse. This is where you come into nature, right? And you cleanse. Okay. Every day you bathe and you wash that off of you because if you don't, you're going to start to believe that it's yours.
100%.
And I was like, it's these moments where it doesn't matter what's going on in my life. For me, like I want to get t-shirts made that said ayahuasca for life.
Yes.
It's got a double meaning, right? Ayahuasca for life. Yes. And ayahuasca for life.
Yes.
Right. Because plant medicine will be a part of my life forever, for the rest of my days, doing plant medicine, introducing people to plant medicine, talking to people, plant medicine, working with people, right? Right now it's psilocybin, right? And right now when I do ayahuasca, I don't seek it out ever anymore, right? I get called, I get a message. Hey, Omar, ceremony. Are you in? Omar, we want you to come with us, right? Because they know of my experience. They also know that I'm a coach. And when they're with me after ceremony, I'm integrating with everybody. It's like, I help them process, I help them integrate, right? I hold them, you know what I mean? I kiss men, I hold men, I teach them how to love. I teach them how to express love. It's part of what mama has taught me that is in my nature to do. My closeness, because I don't have any brothers. I have two sisters. I have my mother. My father was gone a lot. So all my influence comes from women. So that nurturing element is just ingrained. And now I understand why, right? I pass this on to men, right? To teach them how to be with themselves and with others.
You and I have that exact same mission, right? Like that's exactly what I do and why I love men's work so much, because I really feel we all have the ability to be the hero we've been waiting for, right? And for me, when I look around, especially at my fellow men, I see a lot of men that are hurting, right? And I see that, particularly because I hurt, right? And I know what that feels like, right? And as Paul Chek says, if you spot it, you got it, right? So, the ability to relate, right? Like you talked about in your first ceremony, realizing like, oh, I signed up for all this. Well, why is that, right? Like, well, when we think about it, there's many different reasons, but I think one of the most powerful and potent reasons that we do sign up for what we sign up for is because to the degree that we experience it is the degree to what we can understand and understand it and be able to help it in other people. And what a gift to be able to offer other people to allow them to feel more comfortable and safe with their experience of being alive. Right? Like there's no greater gift you can give your fellow human, whether a brother or sister, to be able to help them integrate and really understand that life really is a psychedelic, right? Like if you think about it, consciousness itself is a psychedelic, right? And there's a lot that we're never going to quote unquote understand, right? And yet we can understand ourselves. And to the degree that we understand ourselves is to the degree that we're not so worried about what we don't understand, right? That's why that quote, wise is the man who knows he does not know. What does that mean, right? It means that, as the religious texts say, to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must first enter the mind of a child, right? And so what is a child doing? A child's not worried about knowing anything. They're simply having an experience and they're excited for whatever comes next. They're purely present. And we can all integrate that into our lives on a daily basis. Like I wake up every day and the first thing I do is stretch my arms out and yell, yes, I get another day at life, right? I get another day to go through all the ups, any downs. Like I'm excited for all of it. Pile it on, right? Like, because to me, I look at life as just one big training session, right? Soul school, if you want to call it that, right? We are God experiencing itself. If you want to use God, it's a charged term, source, consciousness, whatever you want to call it, right? But we are everything experiencing separation so that it can understand itself. And as Paul Chek says, great spirit is down for whatever, right? And so that's where people were like, why is there evil in the world? Why is it that? Well, it's all inside of all of us, right? It's the full spectrum, right? It's the full rainbow within all of us, right? And we as individuals, as sovereign beings, get to choose what reality we want for ourselves. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges is that we are also intellectual these days because we've been getting trained in that way since we were, 6 years old normally, that it's really challenging to understand the simplicity of surrender and no, I don't need to know what's going to happen. I'm just going to do my exercises to get out of the mind and let the body figure itself out, right? Because, when was the last time you had to think about peeing, right? It's just like, oh, I got to pee. I go pee, done, right? The body takes care of it. Well, it's the same with emotions, right? We don't need to when I was thinking about, I don't know how to cry, it was because I was trying to figure out how to cry. It's like, listen, Ryan, it's not something you have to figure out, right? It's something you have to surrender to and just let it take its course, right? And let it be messy, right? Let it be, challenging. Let it be whatever it is. Let it be beautiful. Because at the end of the day, it is the present moment and it is the full spectrum of the kaleidoscope changing in every moment that allows it to be beautiful. When we try to slow down the kaleidoscope and get attached to one particular image, we stop the kaleidoscope from evolving and we stop the awe-inspiring aspects of life. And those are what can be that pattern interrupt that plant medicines do. And for me, I am so passionate about what I do and connect with cannabis and of course with other, medicines I've experienced and, I'm training to facilitate as well, where, the ability to hold that space, right? It's a interesting realm to be in because, I imagine you felt similar, but, the first time I really went deep on plant medicines, a lot of it just made sense to me. I felt like this life was much more confusing than that, right? And then most people I know come back and they're like, what the hell did I just experience? And I'm like, oh, well, you're a physical body and you come from infinite spirit, aka cosmic intelligence. And when you come down here, you're gifted a soul to bridge your physical body with the infinite spirit that is the cosmic intelligence that you agreed when you met Elohim, which is God, right? A God of this universe. You agreed with that Elohim that you wanted to be like him, right? Or it, right? We'll use it. And so over thousands and thousands of spirit guide initiation lifetimes, you slowly lowered your density into now you are able to have a physical form. And so what you experienced is you allowed your soul to travel to the fourth dimension, aka the heart, the fifth dimension, which is the quantum realm, and beyond. So depending on where you went, you got to experience what it was like to build your own universe as an Elohim, right? After you graduate the seventh dimension. And so like, these things just made innate sense to me. Like, it was almost like, oh, this is just a remembering, right? Like, and so I feel the exact same way as you were like, when people are integrating, I can help them make sense of things, and I don't know why I understand this stuff. Of course, what I've learned in my lifetime and everything, of course, that has a huge interplay in it because I've felt these things, but the only reason I can articulate them and put language to them is because of what I've learned. But also, why was I called to learn those things? Because those things were never something that I was like, oh, I want to go learn that because it'll, I'll be able to have a business. And it was just like, oh, I am getting like yanked to these things. And that's why I've gotten so heavily into the modern mystery school lineages and, plant medicines and all of these things. And so it's just such a beautiful like journey of flow when you allow your heart to guide the way, right? Like we are all walking each other home, and that's the gift we get to give one another. And at the end of the day, we're just having an experience, right? It's just an experience. It's not a positive one, a negative one. It doesn't mean anything, but it also means everything. It's the full totality of duality and beyond. And that is like, to me, the special sauce of life. It's what makes life worth living for me. Every single moment you can create a new reality for yourself, depending on what you choose to believe. We all have that ability, right? To choose in any moment what story we want to tell ourselves about ourselves and what that story then translates to. And when you can get into that realm, aka when you can subtract from the equation of yourself and get fully embodied in your 3, 4, and 5D dimensions to be able to keep yourself in what I call a quantum flow, that is when the magic of life really starts to come out. And coincidentally, it's exactly what we're experiencing as a kid when we're not putting in any effort, right? It's a lack of effort that actually gets you there, and that's why it's kind of backwards, and it's funny, learning these things myself and watching people go through it because, it really is just like a beautiful remembering. And it's just, I love it, man. It's so much fun.
Well, it's one of the things that, and well, first of all, I said, man, I have done so much plant medicine. I understood everything Ryan just said.
Yes.
Okay. And I understood everything you just said. It totally made sense.
Yes.
Right. It's the first time I've heard it put in that context or in that way. Right. But from beginning to end, okay, there's your answer.
Yes.
there's your answer. Right. You either get it or you don't. Right.
Yes.
And if you don't, here's another. 3 grams, go back in.
Exactly. Go get your questions answered.
So that's number one. And then I remember one of my plant experiences when I was, I didn't know what my intention was going to be. And so my wife was like, well, why don't you ask her to show you the gifts that have not been revealed to you yet? Right. And I was like, oh my God, I never even thought about that. I might have more gifts out there. Right. So I go into the experience, and what she showed me was, no, these are the gifts that you hid from yourself until you were ready.
Oh, yes.
And I was like, oh my God. And she's like, these gifts that you've been hiding from yourself are love and joy. At your essence, at your core, it was one of the things that I came to see. I saw that when I've done 5-MeO DMT once.
Yes.
Okay.
What a powerful medicine.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is not for newcomers. Okay?
Yeah. It's like a big yikes.
Let me say this. A lot of people are like, oh, let me do that first. No.
Yeah.
You're cheating. You're cheating. And I promise you it's going to hurt.
Yes.
Okay. I'd done it. I was like, thank God I'd done enough ayahuasca already, right? That I was able to handle what I was going to experience. But ultimately my experience in that place was boundless sense of bliss, boundless, endless sense of bliss and light and love and joy. and there was this all-knowing, like, this is all there is, and this is who you are, and this is this is what you're put here to do, right? Is to experience, express, share love and joy with the world. Show them how to express it. Show them how to live it, right? Yes. And I come back going, whoa, wow, okay, so simple.
This changes everything.
So, right. And so guess what? When months later, when I asked for what my gifts were, it's like, you've hit this from yourself, love and joy, right? Go into your practice, go into your world, go into your life, right? With love and joy, teach it, embody it, be it. You don't, the thing, we've got it all wrong as humans. Okay. Children were not put on this earth for you to teach them. They were put on this earth for you to remember who you are.
Yes.
Right? And that was the I just remember weeping. I was like on this mat, with this beautiful message, and I'm just weeping, and I'm like holding myself, just kind of like rocking myself, just feeling all that love and feeling all that connection with what is and truth. Right.
Yes.
And so again, right, as you delve into, and if you're listening to this podcast and you've never done plant medicine before, okay, take your time, do your research. I always, knowing what I know now, psilocybin is the most noble, the most gentle, the child.
Yes.
Okay. It's playful. You can come out of it. Okay. Like no matter how deep, you pull the shades up and you can come out of it, right? There's a very specific way that I work with that medicine. I honor it. I use it for therapy, right? Not as a recreational. And sometimes psilocybin is the best place to start. That's might be what you need. But there's some of us that are on this journey, and especially if you're working with people and you're consuming a lot of energy. Mama Ayahuasca, she's the healer. She 100% is the ultimate healer, and she's going to teach you. She's going to show you what you need to see.
Yeah. I mean, you said it perfectly, right? You get what you need, not necessarily what you want. And that applies to all plant medicines, but especially ones like ayahuasca and, peyote as well, because peyote I see as the complementary opposite to something like ayahuasca, where ayahuasca is the motherly energy, very feminine. Peyote is very masculine, right? And my experience with peyote was pretty hilarious, actually. I did a traditional ceremony, and peyote, the interesting thing about it is, you hear about, like how challenging it is to get it down. Right. And so, we had a beautiful ceremony in Mexico where we got to go pick the peyote ourselves and select the buttons we were going to consume, and really got the full experience. And as you start eating it, they give you some grapes next to it. Right. And they're like, hey, you're not supposed to, but if you need them to get it down, you can use these grapes. And so, it's kind of like an orange, like the texture and like the, the explosion of fluid, like an orange. And as you start eating it, you're like, oh, this isn't that bad. Right. And I have a very strong stomach, like super strong. And then as soon as you get through one button, something changes, right? Where every single one you put in your mouth is like your body telling you that is the last one. Right. Like, and then you're like, no, I still got 2 buttons to go. Right. Or 3 buttons. And it just gets so heinous very quickly. And I was laying down. And I didn't, when I went into it, I was like, oh, this is a purging medicine. And one of the gentlemen there was like, no, definitely not. And I was like, no, I've definitely heard that. But I had no service. I couldn't check the internet. I couldn't do anything. Right. So I also don't speak Spanish. So I couldn't really check with a lot of the facilitators. And so, I go down there and we're doing the ceremony, and I'm feeling the urge to like just a projectile vomit. Right. But in my head, I had this like belief that like, no, don't puke. Right. And so I'm sitting there laying down. Right. This dog is like humping my leg. It was hilarious, right? And I'm like just getting this. Yeah, it was wicked funny. It was just the universe playing a cosmic joke on me. Like, why are you taking this so seriously? Just puke, man. Like, what do you really think that like anyone's paying that much attention to you? Like, come on, get over yourself, right? And so, I had this experience where, I was laying there. I was nauseous as hell, and I'm not used to that. Like, I don't really get nauseous. So I'm laying there, and like then in the middle of it and all that challenge, I just burst out laughing. And then as soon as that happened, everything went away. Right. And then later on, my buddy who I went there with, he puked right in the fire, like an absolute gangster. And afterwards he was like, bro, you're supposed to puke in the fire. And I was like, dude, where were you like an hour ago, where I was like stuck in my head about this stuff, And it was just really funny. But, it's beautiful to be able to have those complementary opposites, because, what I've realized is that, in my experience, the whole purpose, if you want to put a purpose to life, it's kind of, it's to choose your own adventure. But at the same time, like, my purpose anyway is to balance masculine and feminine energy, right? Like, I'm a very feminine man. Like, that's how I am, right? I'm very masculine too, but I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? Like, I tell every guy and girl that I know that I love them every time I talk to them. I make sure that, God forbid if it's the last time I talk to them, they know exactly what they mean to me and how I feel about them. And, and if anyone doesn't agree with it, hey, awesome. That's your reality, right? Like, I'm happy and I allow you to choose your own reality for yourself, but this is the one that I choose for me. And, what these medicines have brought out of me is exactly that, right? It's a remembering of who and what I truly am, which is pure unconditional love, having experience in the physical form. And, really when you get that, it's all of a sudden like, oh, well, then I'm already perfect the way I am. All the rest of my experiences, everything else that happens in life is bonus points, right? And, for me, I plan on leaving this, this test in the earth realm with 110. 100 perfect day and 10 bonus points, not because I got everything right, but because I put effort in and I was dedicated and committed to discovering every single aspect of me and leaving nothing on the table. Hunter S. Thompson has a great quote, and I'll butcher it, but basically the caveat of it is, the purpose of this life is not to arrive at death's doorstep with like a perfectly pristine body, having been safe all your life. It's to slide in sideways and go, what a fucking ride, right? And that's the reality I choose for myself.
And so do I.
Yes. That's why we get along famously, Omar. I can already tell, man. There's a certain saying I say with people when I meet them. And, it's like, we just got bunk bed status, man. Like, I'd do bunk beds with you, like that's like the status immediately where it's like best friend status, man. Like, it's that again, it's like when you resonate at a certain vibration, right? Not that one's better than the other, but they just are, right? And when you resonate at a certain vibration, whether that's a low vibration or a high vibration, and I'll go into a couple examples of what that might look like, you just immediately are attracted to someone, right? Like, you're immediately like, oh, you're my people, right? And this is why it's so challenging, and why this quote, you are the 5 people you spend the most time with, is so important. Because if you look around and you're realizing, like, because there might be a certain point where anyone listening might realize, like, hey, a lot of people around me are complaining a lot. Well, that's a mirror. Look at yourself. Are you complaining a lot? And if so, do you choose to continue living in that reality? You're still perfect the way you are if you choose to, but are you happy like that? Right. And really, like, the highest vibrational states that my main mission every day is to get into these, no matter what I have to do, is like love, hope, charity, gratitude, forgiveness. I mean, these are the states where I feel the most like me, and I can allow my heart to really lead the way, and I can just be in awe of everything happening, right? I mean, opportunities have presented themselves that I could have never dreamed about. They're so hilarious that, like, my 6-year-old, 14-year-old, and 21-year-old self are all running and high-fiving me, right? Because the dream of all of those people is still within me, right? And at the end of the day, it was just to feel like I belonged somewhere, that I belonged within me. And, to be able to feel every day like I'm acing that test, because that's what matters to me. Again, it's like everyone has their purpose and their mission. And the only job we have in this life is to find what that is and then go absolutely live it. All gas, no brakes, all in, full spectrum, and just have fun with it, right? Like, it's simply an experience. And it reminds me of that quote, nothing you do matters, but it's very important you do it. And it's like, nothing's more accurate than that, in my opinion. It's just, that's what surmises up my life and really, like, summarizes my life. And plant medicines have been a huge aspect of what has made all this possible for me. And it's amazing getting to talk to other people who have had similar experiences, where we can just give each other that smirk where it's like cosmic laughter right away, where it's like, whoa, like, there is so much substance to life. I mean, there's infinite. And when you do a medicine like 5-MeO, you realize that real quick. I mean, it's almost so much bliss that your human form was almost never meant to experience all of it at once. No. And it's just
not, that's why it's only 10, it's 15, 20 minutes, because you cannot be in that state any longer.
Yes. Like, your nervous system.
Overwhelming this. Yeah, no. It's way too, it's overdrive, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But the awakening to it is so powerful, right? The realization of the perfection, like, it's everything is perfectly orchestrated perfectly. Again, there's no mistakes, right? There is just, this is your essence. This is who you are. And life is about finding your way back to it.
Yes.
Right? And really, that's the hero's journey, is like finding your way back to yourself, remembering who you are. Right? It's such a beautiful journey. And some people, they're never going to experience that in this lifetime, but don't worry, you'll be back.
Yes. You have infinite lifetimes to figure it out. And, one of the things that I think about often is this analogy that I got gifted in another plant medicine ceremony where, if you think of a rough diamond, right? Diamonds are one of the most valuable things on the planet. And yet when they're dug out of the ground, they don't look anything like they do when they're in Kay's Jewelers or whatever, right? Like they're very different. And so what gets them there, right? Well, over time, someone meticulously shaves down and polishes and really makes this into the diamond that you see in the store. And really, I got this download that I've had some friends that have overdosed and passed away and, otherwise, died in tragic ways. Right. And, for a long time, I was feeling bad for them. Right. Like, oh, darn, that stinks. Right. Obviously. I mean, that's the humanness to us. Right. And yet at the same time, I was brought into the ceremony where I was able to see don't you see that's part of it? Right. You have to figure out how to not live and how to lose yourself before you can find yourself. Right. And so it's exactly what these people signed up for, right? Like they signed up to lose themselves so that they could shave more size off their diamond and get closer to that one infinite possibility, or one possibility in the infinite spectrum of all the possibilities. That is that perfect diamond. I believe that our destiny, or our purpose, intersects at the corner of free will and destiny. And so what I mean by that is that you have a destiny, but it's infinite in nature, right? So it could be infinite different possibilities. And yet there's only one that's the greatest and grandest. And your mission throughout these lifetimes is to discover that one existence, that one time where you can you can give it a full send and you fully open up and get to remember who you are. And you get to really remember that you are God in physical form while you're still in physical form. I mean, this is what, Jesus and Buddha and all these people that potentially were real people, potentially weren't, right? But these people that resonated at a conscious level of 1000, if you follow David Hawkins' teachings, the only difference between anyone and them is that they chose to believe and remember that they were God in this lifetime. And so they chose to believe that they could create whatever they wanted. And so if that, use discernment, what did I want to create? I wanted to create heaven on earth. So I did. Period. Not because my life was perfect, not because my life wasn't challenging, but because I chose to see all of it as simply an experience, remembering that I'm infinite and that death is just another chapter in a series of infinite possibilities. And that's it.
Beautiful. It's brilliant. Yeah. And I think that's really what people that are, in the hospitals and that are dying of cancer or facing death, right? What psychedelics help them do is see just that, right?
Yes.
Or at least enough of that, because that was pretty expansive.
Yeah.
But and enough to create that sense of peace and faith that, everything is just as it should be. You have nothing to worry about.
Absolutely, man. Omar, this has been absolutely incredible, man. I love riffing with you. I can't wait to get together with you in person, sit in ceremony with you, get some bunk beds. Who knows what's going to happen, right? But I'd love to. That. Yeah, dude. It's like bunk beds don't get used enough in the adult world, right? It's so fun. I mean, sleepovers, come on, right? It's like, why are we saving that for only kids? Same with race car beds too. It's like, I think, the first adult that comes out with an adult race car bed, bunk bed, where it's 2 king size beds, is going to be a absolute millionaire, and I want to give you an ample opportunity to drop where people can find you, anything that you want the people to know in terms of your podcast or anything you got going on, anything that's lighting you up about life right now, please drop it. You got the mic, my man.
Well, if you want to reach out to me, if you want to find me, it's very simple. You go to omarpinto.com. From there, you can learn about my coaching. You can learn about me. There's my podcast, so you can download it to your favorite mobile device, right? And again, any questions you might have, I offer a free consultation, right? So if you're interested in plant medicine, if you're interested in coaching, or if you're interested in anything that I said, right, and want to reach out, feel free to do so. omarpinto.com. Ryan, thanks again for having me. What a conversation. Epic.
Dude, this is just the beginning, bro. And I got one last question for you if you're up for it. What do you say, man?
You up for it?
All right. Yeah. Hell yeah. Let's bring the heat. So if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what is the one piece of advice that Omar Pinto would suggest to allow them to have the smoothest experience possible?
No question about it. There's no substitute for preparation. So, a lot of times if we're too young, we just haven't had enough life experience to really know what to do with this information. So There is priming, right? Coaching, therapy, research, like really diving in. What the book by Michael, I think it's Michael Pollan.
Yes.
Okay.
How to Change Your Mind. Yes.
How to Change Your Mind. Brilliant book. Okay. Really kind of like gives you a beautiful, lots of nice stories, right? Lots of research, statistics, right? So, do your research, get yourself prepared. Talk to people who have done it before. Ideally, yes, have your tight circle of influence, right? And take it very seriously. Like, honor the medicine. Okay, go in with an intention. Make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, right? And then afterwards, integrate. Get someone that you can, unpack, that is qualified, or at least close enough to you to help you unpack what you discover in that realm, right? But ultimately, honor the medicine. Honor the medicine. Honor yourself, right? Be responsible. The way we're talking about it is like we're college buddies,
yes,
bunk beds,
yes,
that kind of a thing. Love and joy,
yes,
playful, the child, psilocybin. Yes, it's absolutely like on this side. This is, but I'm 50 years old and I didn't do my first plant medicine journey until I was 49 years old. And I realized in that moment when I did it for the first time that there was the reason why I did everything else, learned everything else, tried everything else before I landed here, so that it all kind of comes together for you, right?
Yes.
So don't rush it. Take your time. But if you've been called to it, find your way.
Yes. And trust in the process, right? Like, one of the things that I really dive into now is like, when I'm interested in trying a medicine, just as you were saying, I just let it come to me. I'm not like, if it takes years, that's fine. Like, I'm not, I don't need the medicine. I'm curious about it. Right. And then at the time where it's most beneficial to me, it will come forth. And, just like you were saying, think of it like a romantic relationship, right? Think about you're going on a first date with a woman or a man, right? If you're a woman or if you're homosexual. And so like, think about like what you would do to wow that person, right? You would do some research into them. You would figure out what they like. What kind of flowers do they like, right? What kind of food do they like, right? So, the same way that you go through that is the exact same way you should interact with the medicine if you so choose, right? And, I say this in every episode and it's so worth repeating. These medicines are not meant for everyone, right? So if you're listening, don't start to get, FOMO or like, well, maybe I should do that. Well, maybe you should, but at the same time, you should do some deep inner healing before you look into this, because the ego can get entrenched in a lot of things that can get you into some slippery slope waters. And, the last thing you want to do is find out mid-ceremony, like, maybe this wasn't the right time for me. Yikes. And that can be a challenge,
There is no way out.
Yes. I love bringing back the word yikes because I feel like it's such a funny way to say like, oh shit, right? Like yikes is the best word, And so I love bringing that on any chance I get.
That was brilliant. Perfect.
Thank you, man. And guys, I think I speak for all of us when I express the resounding wow coming from my mind, heart, and spirit in buying the ticket to take this ride into Omar's journey. His expertise in the realms of coaching, mindset, and psychedelic medicines make up the perfect cocktail, non-alcoholic, of course, to allow him to speak to these realms from the embodiment of these experiences that he has had. Omar is a true testament to how we can choose to allow life's challenges to happen for us rather than to us, and how we all hold that capability within. One immediate sign I look for in any true master of coaching, leading, and guiding others is their ability to take the incredible amount of information and knowledge they have and create an easily digestible, relatable platform for others to benefit from, no matter if they are a beginner just starting out on their spiritual journey or an expert who is far along in their spiritual journey. For any of you who heard the call to dive in deeper with Omar within this episode and work with him, I can tell you from personal experience in speaking as someone who has worked with numerous coaches throughout my journey when I say that Omar is more than the real deal. He is the deal that guarantees you will walk away with your head held high, your spirit on fire, and the self-empowerment necessary to create the life experience of your wildest dreams. Give yourself the gift of the most beautiful expression of life possible and reach out to him to begin your journey of self-discovery and self-mastery today. Omar, thank you so much for the work you do, for being the realest example of humble in the human form, and for being a bright light that illuminates the world at large. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.
Aho.